What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Just Parenthings. Today we have another guest. Her name is Jiezhen.
Hi.
And she intentionally went for a water birth.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Twice, actually. Both
Twice?
times, yeah.
Okay.
Both my children were born, we had water births, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with why did you choose a water birth instead of like a traditional birth?
Yeah, I think it goes back to when I first was like, when I first found out about, I didn't even know water birth was an option, right? For I think the longest time. And it was actually, I think this was even before I started having, before we had kids and even before I got married. I just met a mom in Singapore, and she told me she had the most amazing, euphoric, orgasmic birth. I was like, what? Like, you need birth? Like, please tell me more, right? So I was like, okay, tell me more about this. Like, what do you mean? Because at that time, I wasn't even thinking about having kids yet. And she was like, yeah, I had a water birth. And at that time, there was a birth center in Singapore called Four Trimesters. Unfortunately, they closed, I think, during COVID. But now we have a new one called Maya House. But yeah, so she said she had a baby there and she said it was the most amazing experience. And I hadn't heard people talk about birth like that. I think it made me really think like, oh, okay, so when the time does come and I have kids, maybe I want to consider this as an option. So she told me, just how there's been a lot of, I think, birth in the media, right? We watch movies and always like some medical emergency, the mom's like rushing into the hospital screaming. And then I think that's kind of like the idea people have, that birth is painful. It's like, kind of in medical emergency, but it's not. And I think being able to learn more about that was probably the first step in the whole process. And so I kind of like bookmarked that, I was like, oh, this is cool. When I, have kids, I'll think about it. And when I did, when we did, start, our family and, I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, let me go and look into this now.
When you were searching up about water birth and when you were reading about it, what made you pull the trigger and say, okay?
I think so. I spoke to some people who had a water birth first. I saw a lot of videos as well. And I was just like, how come everyone looks so peaceful? And like, why does everyone look so happy? And like,
because it's for the photo, ma.
There's something going on, but it's a video, right, of the baby coming out, right?
Oh, okay, okay.
And it's not that, it's not painful. I think that's, also not... and everyone's experience as well. But it just felt like a very beautiful way to bring a child into the world. It's a gentle landing. And the more I found out about it, right, like, just that because the baby is in water, right, it's in the amniotic fluid and it's like flowing around. And that's another story. I asked my daughter recently, she's 3.5. I asked her, what was it like in my belly? Because apparently, I don't know if y'all have kids around the age, they can remember,
Huh?
Yeah, so I asked Juniper this week. I asked her yesterday, and I was like, "Hey, do you remember what it was like in Mama's belly?" And she said, "Yeah, I was swirling and whirling around, and I heard Mama's heartbeat. And then I heard Papa say, like, oh, I love you so much. I play music for you," because Jared used to play music for Juniper in my belly. And she said, "Yeah, Papa said, Mama is so amazing and so strong." And they can remember, you go and try.
You know what my eldest told me when she was younger?
Yeah.
I chose you guys. I chose you guys to be my
that's
parents.
So beautiful. I think it's true, like they're in the 2 to 5 year old stage. I think they're still in this in-between world. They're like still babies, but they're also young children. And that's so beautiful. How did you feel when she said that?
Okay. I feel like I feel like when Juniper said it, it's true, right? Or whether when young kids say it, it's true because they have no idea about
what
these things. Like they have no knowledge about these things. So whatever they're saying, it really might be true.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those things you don't know whether, or maybe they heard it from somewhere, or
I actually really watched water birth before when I was pregnant.
What did you think?
And I lived in LA for a bit. And when I was in LA, right, everybody was talking about water birth. Everybody was on that water birth. They were like, it's the most zen thing. And then when this was when I already gave birth, but then I had one friend who was considering water birth. And when I asked her why, she said, I heard it gives you the best orgasms.
Oh.
It's like your life's best orgasm.
we can ask now.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
Is it
ask that
true?
question. Is it true?
So I highly recommend this book called Orgasmic Birth as well. And there's a whole document. It doesn't mean like, and I think it's how you define like orgasmic as well, right?
Yeah.
It's very like, there is this like, I think
Euphoric
it's a
feel.
high, it's a euphoric high that actually comes like that. that boost of like oxytocin and everything that comes from giving birth that can create that. But I don't think that's the only reason why. It's really that it feels like you're floating, right? You know, when you're in water, especially if you're pregnant, you know, like I know you've gone swimming when you're pregnant or anything, but just that feeling of floating and rest. Okay, when my daughter, so I had my daughter in LA actually, in the US, and you know, she so she was born. I labored in water, but then I gave birth on land, if that makes sense. So I came out to give birth because I was just getting like, you know, I was too relaxed in the pub. It was very relaxing in the water, you know, because it just, when I got in and, you know, I just felt like, oh, I could just like exhale, you know, imagine like, you know, that giving birth has a lot of, I don't know what your births were like, you know, but strong sensations, right? And when I went in, I remember I could just like exhale and relax. And I actually took a nap like in the tub. I was just like, oh, this is very comfortable.
And then the contractions?
Yeah. So I think, and that goes back to the prep, right? The contractions, I like to describe them as waves and surges, because I think what helps when you do birth prep, right, is that you know that it doesn't last forever. It's not, I don't consider the sensations pain the way you would if you broke your leg or even a stomach ache, right? A stomach ache is like constant until it's gone. But contractions and surges, they rise and fall, right? The maximum an average contraction will last is 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes max. Most of the time they're shorter than that. And so you know, if like you can tell yourself, I can do anything for like 2 minutes, right? Like it just, you know, it's a whole idea of impermanence, right? It comes and goes, and then you have break in between. Like when I was giving birth to Jasper, I could talk to like, you know, Jared and people in between, because I knew that it was going to come and it was going to go, and then you know how to just ride the wave. And at that point it was quite close together already. Like the surges, they were, yeah, it was quite, I remember when I normally, so I had in the US I worked with a midwife in LA, and normally they don't do cervical checks, they only when you ask, but I wanted her to check, and I was already like 8 cm when I got in the water. So it was like, you know, I think it was, the baby was ready like to kind of come down. So it was the surges were quite on one on top of, you know, the other already. But once you go in the water, it kind of just allows everything to like slow down, allows you to like just be and rest and like, you know, it just provides that, you know, as if you are in the, like the baby also in the womb. And a big reason why I did it also was, I think I just always thought there must be another way to bring kids into the world. That birth, because a lot of trauma actually starts at birth. You know, you talk about trauma earlier, right? Like, you know, when kids are, and moms also, and the birthing parent is kind of, you know, put through procedures that they don't want to be put through. It's different if you choose it. But, you know, I think so being able to choose being really intentional and choosing how I wanted to bring my child into the world was quite important. And that was just something I think that resonated with me. I love being near water. Like my favorite place in Singapore is MacRitchie Reservoir. You know, I think being near the ocean and water bodies is something as human beings that we're also just drawn to that. And it's calming. It's, you know, so easeful. I just remember both times when I got into the water, I just was like, you know.
So it helped with the pain?
Yeah. So it helps with the especially the back, you know, when the baby is coming down. Like that pressure, it helps ease off the pressure. It's almost like, you know, when you get into a hot
like
bath.
Gravity.
Exactly. Yeah. So gravity, there's that buoyancy, right? Like it makes things feel a bit lighter. And I think it makes and because I mentioned baby is in the you know, water and the amniotic sac kind of floating around, it's a very easeful transition as they come to the world. So they're not just like, bright lights kind of thing, but, you know, they ease into the water and then they come out. And then, and with, you know, this time I actually, you know, I caught like, you know, my own baby as well, which is like so amazing. Then put it on my chest and it was,
But you did it both in LA.
Yeah.
Both your births were in US.
No, I had my second in Singapore, but I think it's so. What was your? You have how many kids?
I have three kids. No, wait. So water birth is available in Singapore.
It is. So it is available in Singapore if you choose to do it. So Thomson Medical has water birth set up. So, but I think it's based on availability. It's like if someone is using it, then I think they don't have that many water birthing suites. NUH used to have. I don't know if they still have. I don't think they have anymore. But I think Thomson has. And in in Singapore, if you want to do a home birth, there is Dr. Lai who does that. There are resources. You have to set up your whole birth team and find the right birth support. But there are options. So you just have to look for it. And I'm happy to, think, reach out and chat more. But yeah, with the water birth, you're right. It really feels
intentional.
It really felt like I entered another universe. I know it kind of sounds kind of strange, right?
No,
but
it's not, because it's so spiritual and very. I feel it's very intentional. That's why when people talk to me about it when I was in America, right, they all say that it's a very intentional thing. Like, and the reason why water birth, I mean, it's nothing bad. I think it's a personal choice. But the reason why I think water birthing is not a very big thing in Singapore is because people are not as aware of their intentions and their surroundings compared to like LA.
I think not so much that, but because there's not many people who do it, there is not much awareness on water birth being available in Singapore. Like, I just found out from her that there is water birth in hospitals, which gives you that assurance because you're not doing it at home. But I think when people think of water birth, they think, okay, then you're doing it at home.
Yeah.
Okay, but because there's an Asian stigma about drowning. That's why I think people are scared of water birth.
Drowning. It's not about drowning. It's just lack of awareness, not knowing.
It's I think awareness, knowing people. I think a big thing, also, I think in Singapore, it's just knowing that we have options, right?
Correct.
Knowing that we have options.
If I had this conversation earlier, I would probably have tried water birth in a hospital. But because I didn't know.
Oh, you really didn't know?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
It was just, home birth is obviously a no-no for me because it's dangerous. But if I can go to a hospital where I know I'm taken care of and do water births, why not?
But water birth just started though. Just started.
It's actually been around for a while.
Really?
So but I think people just didn't know, right? Like people don't know it's an option.
I've heard of water birth since way back, since like 10 over years ago. But it was always like it's in the US thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more publicized in the US, also because we have limited water birthing facilities in Singapore, right? But I think that it's become more known. Like I know, and just it allows for that gentle entry into the world, right? I know a mom who also, she had a breech hospital birth and she had a water birth as well, and that helped so much with like the baby coming down. And I think people don't know, right? People also don't know that you can actually give birth vaginally when you have a breech baby if you have the right practitioner in Singapore. There's only a few probably that are trained and confident to do it, but it's doable, right? It's just a variation of normal. And my daughter, when we were born, she was born in peak pandemic times in the US. So actually, it was actually much safer for us to have a home birth than to be in the hospital. And we were in LA, in California. It's like Wild Wild West, right? And it was, home birth to me felt like the safest option because all the variables are like there, right? And I think COVID was definitely a catalyst for us, but it was also just the more we learned about the cascade of interventions that can happen, because all of this actually like impacts everything that comes after, right? So, and this is something I think I only learned when I got pregnant. I had no idea about all this stuff, just the implications of, certain procedures that are done that impact like breastfeeding after that impact like baby bonding with mom, like their awareness of the world, the benefits of, just coming through the birth canal for the immunity, all those things. So, yeah, I think it's awareness. I only learned about this probably in the last few years when I became a mom. It was not on my radar before that.
But is there certain criteria you need to meet before you can be safe to proceed with water birth?
I think it depends on your medical practitioner and provider, like, who is taking care of you, depending on their varying comfort levels and what they're also confident and capable of doing. I think mostly, baby has to be, like in Singapore, I think baby has to be, healthy. They can't have any kind of like, I know like for instance, like a baby was born and the stomach wasn't attached to the intestine, things like that. Like that would require medical interventions earlier on. They might not, but generally most births
or like
are
if
low
the
risk.
mother has pre-eclampsia and all that.
Actually, I'm not sure. That one, I think I didn't have pre-eclampsia, so I'm not aware of like whether that would impact it. But yeah, I think talking to a provider and finding a provider that supports, what you want in your birth and is willing to also adjust and, with you along the way is probably the most important part, finding someone that does that. Yeah.
So, okay, bring us through the process on the day itself.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I talk about maybe I talk about my daughters, because that was my first time, right? So
Right.
it's like all new and fresh. Just now I'm like, oh, we've done this before. So maybe I talk about Juniper's birth. So let's see. I think okay, so you asked about the logistics of it as well, right?
Yeah.
So the preparation is so I think the big part, as I mentioned earlier, is also the months leading up to it, right? Just understanding how contractions and surges work, understanding my body, how baby comes down, that I think preparing the space for us was also quite important. So I wrote affirmations or notes to myself that I wanted to remember in the birth, that each surge is actually very purposeful. It's bringing you closer to meeting your baby. So it's contracting, right? Because it's you feel the muscles like this because it's pushing baby down. So in that sense, it's very purposeful pain if you think about it. You break a leg, it's not very purposeful pain, right? It's kind of oh, no. But with birth, every kind of surge is helping you kind of get closer to meeting your baby, which is such a beautiful thing, right? So things like that. I think I had the wall, so talking about setting up the space, right? So I had, things I wanted to remember. I wrote things like, oh, I'm strong, safe, and supported. Remembering that, I can do this, right? And remembering that, so many women before me have birth babies. This is not, anything that no one has ever done before, and leaning on that strength. Of the mothers who have walked before me, I think was also very helpful. So I had birthing affirmation cards, just because sometimes the hospital space, I don't know what it was like when yours was in a theatre, the operating theatre, but was yours did you also do a
delivery suite?
Was it very bright or was it dark? Or
Normal warm light.
Warm light, yeah. So the warm light helps, just create that, most mammals, if you look at them, they don't give birth in the middle of they usually find broad daylight and stuff. They usually find a cozy dark corner where they can feel protected and calm. Because if everyone's looking at you, it's very hard to give birth.
Ambient lighting, guys.
Ambient lighting,
Cozy,
So we had fairy lights and stuff. But preparing the space, right, to welcome our baby. And I think what was so beautiful was that, because we were at home in LA, we could take the baby and just go to bed after that and sleep. So I went into labor in the middle of the night, as a lot of people do. Jared and I went out for ice cream, and we had just finished a bunch of big work projects, and we were so we were talking about it, and we were I think we're ready for baby to come now. And I think Juniper heard us, and we're I feel ready now, right? I think it was getting close to the EDD, and we're it feels good. It feels like it's time. So we went out for ice cream, and then came home. And then I lost what they call the mucus plug, which blocks the cervix, right? And so now I texted it to my doula. I was like, oh, is this time? And she was like, it could be, but it could also be just go back and rest. So they always tell you when you think you are going to labor, just lie down and rest. You need to conserve your energy, right? Because it's like running a marathon. It's not a sprint. So we went to sleep. Jared got, moved the stuff in the room just so there would be space if we did go into labor. And then and I think it was around 1 a.m. Then I started having those surges that you can no longer ignore, because when you are about close to give birth, they have what they call Braxton Hicks. That's for the practice contractions, right? And surges. So, but those are you just feel the muscles, but it's not, you cannot ignore it.
Not
you cannot
as intense.
Yeah, it's not as intense. They say if you can go back to sleep, it's still probably okay lah, But once I realized, I don't think I can sleep to this anymore, then then I woke up and I was like, oh, Jared, I think it's time. So the first thing, we did was to notify our, our birthing team. So in other words, our midwife and our doula and the midwife assist. And then so they brought the birthing tub. But it really depends on the setup. I think there's no one right way to do it. And obviously if you go to a hospital, it's there already. In Thompson, I believe it's like a bathtub kind of setup. So then, we kind of went through, and most of the time when you are doing a water birth, actually water births generally don't have medical intervention, right? They're not, you don't have any epidural or anything, because people ask me this, but I think sometimes it's not obvious. So it's really about you being with your breath and baby and working together as a team, because you are a team, right? So I think I just labored through the morning, and with my first birth, it was quite different. I wanted Jared with me the entire time. He did not leave my side for 18 hours, okay? He was
You were in the water for 18 hours?
No, I was not in the water for 18 hours. Actually, for the water, ideally you want to get in when you're ready to kind of have the baby push, right, and come out. So you want to be far along enough that it is. So my wife was like, you go in when you feel ready, but she said, I'm happy to check if you want. So they always offer cervical checks, but it's never like
forced onto you.
Yeah, forced onto you. So it's really like, the empowered kind of choice. I felt very empowered in my birth. I felt like super badass. Like I was like, I am in control here. Like, this is me. And I think that's why my daughter is the way she is. She's just like so free and so, sure of who she is. And like, anyways, but that's a story for another day.
Was it the same? Did you do it at home as well?
Yeah, so I labored at home as well. But I think in Singapore, it really depends on what your setup is, right? So if you're at a hospital, so I know for my friends that have had water births in hospitals, then most of the time they tell you to labor at home as long as possible, right? Until it's time. Then you go to the hospital, because firstly, you don't want to just be kind of hanging around the hospital if you're not ready. My friend also had, I have friends that had to go hospital and come back like 3 times because they were not ready to be admitted yet. And can you imagine how frustrating that must be when you're in the middle of labor and you have to transfer to the hospital?
Yeah.
That's something to think about.
Yeah, so you want to labor at home for as long as possible is what's recommended. And in most birth prep classes, and I had amazing birth prep class in LA, and then in Singapore, there's a midwife who also practices as a doula called Red, and she has these amazing Vibrant Pregnancy, which is for moms, like thinking about how you can be vibrant in your pregnancy and also love-based birth. And we did that here to like prepare ourselves, even though it's our second baby. Some people think, second baby don't need to do birth prep. But I think you learn so much from the first birth that that is so powerful to process and then bring to your next birth. So
the obvious one, like drowning.
Oh, like the mom drowning or the baby drowning?
The baby.
Okay. So here's the thing. So this is a very valid question, right? Because even my husband Jared was also like, what the baby like swallows the water or whatever. Like in when they come out, what happens if they take water into their lungs? But what we learn is that. So baby's already in water, right? In your belly. So they're already in water. So this is why it's important that, for instance, if you buy your own birth tank in Singapore, you need to make sure it's deep enough if you're having a home birth, okay? Like, because baby needs to come through the water and then come out and then not go back in the water, right? But if they can float in the water for a while, because they're already in water, right? In your amniotic sac, in your womb, they are in water. Then they come through the water and, they're getting their oxygen from the umbilical cord at that point. So that's why, now there's a lot of encouragement to practice delayed cord clamping, where you just allow the baby to get their full, oxygen volume as well. Because the oxygen is coming from the umbilical. And people also worry about, there's cord around their neck and everything. But that's fine, because they're getting oxygen from, they're not breathing from their on their own yet. They're still getting the oxygen from the cord. So they come down through the birth canal, and then they come through the water. So even if they swim around the water for a bit, it's fine. Like, because they're still in the same water body. They're still they're going from water to water.
Like
correct?
they got oxygen masks.
Yeah, they got their own oxygen mask from the umbilical. That's such a good way to look. Yeah, so they have an oxygen mask, and then they come down, and then generally you pick them up, and then you put them on the chest, and you make sure they don't go back into the water, because that's when they take their first breath. So if you think about it, compared to maybe a normal, like, not normal, a more like traditional kind of animal, they come out and just straight into the air, right? But sometimes babies still take a moment to get the water out and just take their first breath, and that's when you feel the first cry and all of that. So so they won't drown. The only reason why they would is you actually drop them back into the water, which you probably would not.
After their lungs,
after they come out,
after their lungs have been like activated.
Yes, after their lungs have been activated.
Yeah. In my head, right? Like, stupid me, I thought when the baby comes out straight away, they
not when they come into the air, right? When they come to the world. But because the water is there, which is why they say it's a very gentle progression. It's because they're water, and then so there's like almost this in-between worlds, right? Kind of time where they're in the water.
Giving Little
Have you
Mermaid.
seen pictures of baby in the water, and like it looks like that's like, you imagine that's how they look like when they're in the womb, and then they kind of come out and then they take their first breath and their lungs activate.
But who helps you do this? You have to do it
You
yourself.
can do it yourself, or your birth rider can do it for you.
So we've come to the end of this episode. I hope you guys liked it. Thank you so much, Jiezhen, for coming and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
If you guys have anything you'd like us to talk about, let us know in the comment section below. If not, I'll see you guys in the next episode.